The Intra-Migration of Louisville, Kentucky. How the racial majority of West Louisville changed. Due to the city's location on the Ohio River, it has been considered a more progressive city within the South. But within Louisville exists their own form of segregation that has existed throughout the city's history and in the area known as West Louisville. West Louisville has always been a place where people could live, go to school, and work. Today, West Louisville consists of a black majority population, but throughout much of Louisville's history, the area has been predominantly white. It was a place where white families lived, but also dominated. The west end of Louisville has historically been segregated, mainly keeping black people out. Due to white flight and black migration, the area transitioned from being predominantly white to predominantly black. There were 3 reasons for white flight. The constant impact of floods, which were a constant threat to the area throughout its history. The creation of an industrial chemical plant known as Rubber Town, whose pollution would anger the white residents of the area, would be another factor of white flight. The 3rd reason for white flight was the small presence of African Americans within the West End that had already existed throughout parts of the area. Floods. The West End was constantly harassed by flooding waters from the Ohio River. Over time, the consistent flooding would ultimately decrease the property values of the homes within the area. According to the West End Community Council, property values of West Louisville would decline after the Great Flood of 1937. Rubber Town would become the name of an industrial chemical plant that would create pollution within the area, which would also hurt property values and become another factor of white flight. In these articles, the residents of the areas plan to organize against the plants due to their impact on property and also their health. The West End Community Council noted how Rubber Town and their creation of West End dust would decrease demand for homes and ultimately property values. The small presence of African Americans, the 3rd factor in white flight. In the West End existed what was called checkerboard housing, meaning a black household among a predominantly white area. The city directory from 1917 shows small italic C's to identify African Americans, and in this excerpt you can see the small presence of black people within the neighborhood with a white majority. The West End Community Council also noted this presence and its increase of African Americans in the area until the 1950s. As one group leaves, another arrives. And like white flight, there were 3 factors for black migration to the west end of Louisville. The small presence of African Americans. This presence being a factor for white people leaving was also a factor for black people coming in. Another factor for black migration was the physical attraction of the area. West Louisville consisted of beautiful homes, parks, and other scenery that was an attraction for African Americans to move to the area. The last factor for black migration was the promotion of the area by the West End Community Council. The council would play a role in promoting the area to African Americans due to the hope of creating an integrated West End and being an example to the rest of the South. The small presence of African Americans. Due to the presence among the white majority area, African Americans looked to the area as a potential home to be among others and also a place outsiders were familiar with due to the existent presence of African Americans in West Louisville. The West End Community Council noted how an individual Negro would rather buy a home in West Louisville over an area in order to be in a familiar and friendly atmosphere. Physical attraction. The West Louisville area consisted of many attractive features as a place to live. It consisted of various beautiful homes, scenic parks like this coaster at Chickasaw Park, and also other scenic views one could find throughout the West End. The West End Community Council also noted this as a factor for African Americans moving to the area. They noted how the tree-lined streets and old well-built homes made the area attractive as a place to live. The promotion of the area by the West End Community Council. In a paper explaining the history and intentions of the council, they explained one of their goals to adjust whites and blacks to a life within an integrated community. In this article from the Courier-Journal, discussing the council's eventual demise, the author explains how the council worked for racial harmony and how they also promoted the area through job programs. This helped influence African Americans throughout Louisville, increasing the amount of black people moving to West Louisville. The factors for white flight and the black migration into West Louisville are what helped transform the area from a predominantly white area to the predominantly black one you can still find today.